Hello and welcome, everyone, where we take your sources and really dig into them for the most fascinating insights and unexpected facts. I'm Tom.
And I'm Amy. Today we're exploring the incredible life and legacy of Adam Mickiewicz. He's a figure whose influence goes way beyond Poland.
Yeah, we got some great stuff from a listener Wikipedia excerpt, sure, but also this list of 100 interesting facts from a Polish primary school, which is fantastic.
It really is. So we're going to try and figure out who Mickiewicz really was. Not just the poet, but, the activist, the mystic.
The family man, which sounds complicated.
Yeah.
And even this surprising precursor to science fiction. That one jumped out at me.
Definitely. We'll follow his journey basically from being this spirited, maybe slightly odd student in Vilnius,
Right.
all the way to becoming this revered national icon with monuments all over Europe.
So you'll find out why they called him a poet of transformations, a bard of the Slavs, the big figure in Polish Romanticism.
But also, surprisingly, how he kept connections to classical ideas, too. It's a real mix. So let's get started. Let's peel back those layers.
Okay, so to really get Mickiewicz, we have to start at the beginning. Adam Bernard Mickiewicz, born Christmas Eve, 1798.
Right. In either Zausy or Novargrodek, the sources vary slightly.
And apparently, not your average kid.
Yeah.
Described as solitary, maybe a bit melancholic, prone to tears.
Yeah, his own brother, Franciszek, talked about how young Adam didn't really play like other kids. Instead, he'd wander through cemeteries, explore ruins.
Wow. Okay, that's different.
It is. And what's really fascinating is how these early traits sort of hint at the complex person he'd become. Even as a child, he apparently thought he had clairvoyant tendencies.
Seriously, clairvoyant.
Yeah, this early mystical leaning, plus this sort of pessimism about the past and despair for his friends. It wasn't just, kid stuff. It feels like the groundwork for his later romanticism and spiritual searching.
But he wasn't a total loner. The sources say he found a balance at university, learned to value discussions.
Exactly. He learned to engage intellectually with others, even with that introverted side.
So how did all this shape him intellectually? His father was a court defender, and he went to a Dominican school. Average student, apparently, but did extracurriculars.
Right. And then comes 1812. That's a huge year.
Yeah, his father dies, and Napoleon's massive army marches right through his hometown, heading to Russia.
Just imagine that. The upheaval, seeing history unfold right there and losing his father. That's intense for a young teenager.
You have to think that exposure to huge political events, plus the family's tough financial spot after his father died, it must have pushed him.
Absolutely. It seems it propelled him towards Vilnius, towards the Imperial University. It was a practical move, aiming for some stability.
And he studied a bit of everything, humanities, but also sciences, politics.
Yeah, quite broad. And he even went to the teacher seminary there, which guaranteed him a teaching job later in the Tsarist system.
Which really highlights the family's struggles, doesn't it? Needing that security.
It does, even while his mind was clearly drawn to bigger ideas.
And it's during these studies, 1817, that he co-founds the Philomathic Society with Tomasz Zen.
Ah, yes, the Philomaths. Started as a secret lovers of knowledge group, right? For self-education.
But it grew quickly, became something more patriotic. Over 200 members by 1822.
And sister groups, too, like the Philarettes, the Lovers of Virtue. These weren't just book clubs.
No, definitely not. They were about preparing youth for life, in a nation without its own state. That's resistance through education, through character
The
building.
affirmative experience. And this period also brought that first big unfulfilled love, Marilla Ware the Krona.
Oh, Marilla. He was gentry, she was wealthy nobility.
Right, a mismatch in the parents' eyes anyway. They loved each other, but she was pushed into an arranged marriage.
Classic romantic tragedy trope, but real life for him, and it poured into his poetry.
Absolutely. You see it clearly in poems like Du M and that version of Depreciato. That personal pain really fueled his early romantic voice.
Now, here's something else that struck me as shaping him. The sources mention him living with a priest for a bit. And apparently being forced into religious practices, which ironically kind of turned him off institutional religion.
Yes, that's the interpretation. Some see that backlash, maybe a loss of faith, reflected later in part 4 of his big work, Zaidi.
Zaidi, that's the really famous poetic drama, right?
Oh.
Folklore, personal stuff, national themes, all woven together.
That's the one. And around the same time, he gets really into Voltaire, translates him, supposedly picks up a cynical worldview from him.
So you've got this mix. Early mysticism, then rationalism from Voltaire. intense romantic love and this growing patriotism. It's a lot.
It's an incredibly complex foundation, isn't it? Really sets the stage for everything that follows.
So after university, he starts teaching in Kono in 1819.
Yeah.
But the Philomathic Society catches up with him.
Right. The Tsarist authorities saw groups like that as subversive, dangerous.
So 1823, he gets arrested, imprisoned in a monastery in Vilnius for almost 6 months.
And then sentenced to internal exile in Russia. Not exactly a reward for his studies.
No. And this exile lasts 4 years, 1824 to 1827.
Yeah.
He travels quite a bit within Russia: Petersburg, Odessa, Moscow, Crimea.
He even had an official post for a while working for Governor General Golitsyn in Moscow, and taught Polish, got briefly engaged to one of his students, Karolina Jaenisch.
So even in exile, it was a period of growth, meeting people, seeing places.
Definitely. It exposed him to new ideas, new circles. Crucially, he connected with major Russian poets Pushkin, Khomyakov, Zhukovsky.
Pushkin.
Yeah. And he even met some of the future Decembrists, those aristocratic revolutionaries.
And he was apparently quite the star in Russian salons, famous for improvising poetry.
He was. It shows his charisma, his quick mind. But there was also the downside, censorship.
Ah, yes. His work, Konrad Wallenrod.
Right, that epic poem about liberating a nation through cunning, maybe even deceit. Very politically charged.
And the censors made him cut things. And I had that bit about Tsar Nicholas I being father of so many peoples.
Exactly. You can almost feel the forced irony in that preface. A bitter pill to swallow, I imagine.
But those experiences, Vilnius, Kauno, the Russian exile, they all feed back into his writing later.
Hugely. Especially into Ziadi Part 3, which he wrote later in Dresden. The sources say the final section, the Ustep, or digression.
The one addressed to my Muscovite friends.
That's it. It's seen as deeply personal. A direct address to those Decembrists he knew, maybe even Pushkin, reflecting on their shared hopes and the harsh reality of oppression.
You really see how his life just became the raw material for his art.
Absolutely. So he finally leaves Russia in May 1829, and then he travels through Europe for nearly 2 years.
Meets Goethe in Germany.
Yeah.
Travels in Switzerland, Italy.
Yeah. And it's in Rome, December 1830, that he hears the news. The November uprising has broken out back in Poland.
A major revolt against Russia. Did he try to join?
The sources say he made an attempt to cross the border into Greater Poland, but it didn't happen. He ended up back in Dresden, and his friend's place there became a real hub for Polish exiles.
And this period also marks a big shift in his writing style, right, from his earlier, more classicist stuff.
Exactly. His debut in 1818, Zima Miecka, was quite classical, but the 1822 collection, Ballads and Romances, that's seen as the real launchpad for Polish Romanticism.
And the opening ballad, Romantyczność, that caused a stir.
Oh, definitely. It basically championed folk wisdom, feeling, emotion over cold, hard Enlightenment reason and science. It presented a whole new way of looking at morality, emotion.
And even took a shot at his old professor, Szuniadecki, a big Enlightenment guy.
He did. It was a bold statement, a real challenge to the established way of thinking.
So that collection really leaned into folk themes, supernatural stuff, strong morals.
Completely. Good versus evil, crime and punishment. His lifelong fascination with folklore, which started in childhood, got woven tightly with his political ideas.
How so?
Well, he saw folklore as a vital source of national identity, something purely Polish or Polish-Lithuanian that could strengthen the spirit of the nation when the state itself was gone.
Ah, I see. So it's all connected, the personal, the political, the folklore, the art.
That's the key to understanding him, I think, that constant interplay. It really defined his work and set the tone for a whole generation of writers.
So after the exile, the travel, the literary breakthrough, the next big chapter is Paris.
Right. He settles there for more than 20 years, becomes a central figure in the Great Emigration.
That's the big wave of Polish exiles after the failed November uprising, trying to keep the cause alive from abroad.
Exactly. He was involved in various Polish organizations, and it's here, in 1834, he marries Selina Szymanowska.
But family life wasn't easy for him.
No, it sounds incredibly difficult. They had 6 children, but Selina suffered from serious mental illness.
The sources even mention it drove him to suicidal thoughts and an attempt in 1838.
Yes, it seems it took a terrible toll on him, and there was also an affair during the marriage, so a lot of personal turmoil.
Yet somehow he kept producing work and holding down significant positions.
Amazingly, yes. He was a professor of Latin literature in Lausanne for a year, 1839-40.
And then the big one, professor of Slavic languages at the Collège de France in Paris, starting in 1840.
That was a very prestigious post. His lectures there, the Parisian lectures, were apparently hugely popular. Drew crowds beyond just the Polish émigrés. People like George Sand came to listen.
He must have been a captivating speaker.
He must have been, but that academic career didn't last smoothly either.
Why not? What happened?
Well, from 1841 onwards, he got deeply involved with Andrzej Toyaski.
Ah, the Polish messianist figure.
Exactly. Mickiewicz even ended up leading Toyaski's group, the Circle of God's Cause.
And this Polish messianism. Remind us what that was about.
It was this sort of mystical philosophical idea that emerged after Poland lost its independence. It basically said Poland, through its suffering, was like a Christ of nations.
A martyr whose suffering would somehow redeem or liberate other nations.
That's the core idea. And Mickiewicz started using his prestigious Collège de France lectures to promote Toyaski's mystical teachings, mixed with his own anti-monarchy, pro-Napoleon ideas.
Okay, I can see how that might not go down well in an academic setting in France at the time.
Precisely. It was seen as inappropriate, too political, too mystical, and it led to his suspension from the professorship in 1844.
It's such a paradox, though. The sources say even while he was criticizing the Catholic Church in lectures for, betraying Christian ideals, he still went to Catholic Mass regularly.
It is a paradox. And he even had an audience with Pope Pius IX in 1848. It shows this really complex, maybe conflicted relationship he had with traditional religion alongside his own strong mystical path.
But his commitment to Poland never wavered, did it? Even with all the personal and professional chaos.
Not at all. During the Spring of Nations in 1848, that year of revolutions across Europe, he went to Italy to organize a Polish legion to fight for independence.
And back in Paris in 1849, he started a newspaper, La Tribune des Peuples.
Yes, an international political daily, championing quite radical social ideas about freedom and justice.
But that didn't last long either. Russian intervention shut it down.
Afraid so. The pressure was immense. He resigned just months later. It shows the constant battle he was fighting.
And his last known work, interestingly, was a Latin ode to Napoleon III in 1854, still hoping for French help against Russia.
It seems that hope for French intervention for Poland's sake never quite died, even right near the end.
And the final years, working quietly as a librarian at the Arsenal Library under police surveillance, quite a contrast to the fiery professor and activist.
It is. A somewhat subdued final act in Paris before his last journey.
Okay, so let's talk about the literary masterpieces themselves, beyond the biography. Pantadeus, that's the big one, right?
Absolutely. Published in Paris, 1834, it's seen as his last truly great epic poem.
And it's often called the final grand epic of that old Polish gentry culture, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. A nostalgic look back.
It is nostalgic, definitely, an idealized vision of noble Poland. But that nostalgia served a really important purpose, especially then.
How so?
Yeah.
It wasn't just looking backward.
Well, while he's known as the lawgiver of Polish Romanticism, some scholars argue it's more complex. People like Alina Witkowska say he didn't just throw out the Enlightenment.
He still admired its form, its rational side, like Voltaire.
Exactly. He blended that classical sense of harmony with romantic dynamism. Adam Czerniawski even compares him to classicists like Krasicki or Pope, highlighting his realism, that famous line from Pantadeus, I see and describe.
So the realism, the describing what he saw or remembered, was that tied to his national duty?
That's one interpretation, that his fidelity to depicting reality, even an idealized reality like in Pantadeus, was about grounding Polish identity. It set him apart from romantics who maybe purely embraced the fantastical.
So in painting this picture of the idealized past, he was actually kind of creating a blueprint, a vision of Polishness for people to hold on to when there wasn't a Polish state.
Precisely. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was an act of imaginative nation building, giving people a shared vision, a cultural homeland when the political one was gone.
But then, paradoxically, his work is also full of folklore, right? Supernatural elements.
Oh, completely. Devils, dryads, folk tales from Poland and Belarus. They're all over ballady, art romance, and Ziadi. It's that incredible mix again. The real, the mythical, the ideal.
Which brings us to maybe the most surprising part. Mickiewicz as a precursor to science fiction.
Isn't that fascinating? His unpublished, lost work, Historia Preußisches History of the Future.
Lost, so we don't actually have it.
No, tragically, only fragments and descriptions from friends who read it. But based on those accounts, It sounds revolutionary.
What kinds of things did he imagine?
Things like, well, devices for intercontinental communication, ways for people to fly across the globe, major shifts in society and government. This is the early 19th century.
Way before Jules Verne or H.G. Wells were writing that kind of stuff.
Potentially, yes. Some accounts suggest his vision might have been even bolder in some ways. Antoni Oudnik called it the Don Quixote of its time. It suggests a mind capable of truly extraordinary leaps of imagination, not just about the past, but the future, too.
Wow, what a loss that it's gone.
It truly is. And his versatility also showed in translation. He didn't just translate, he Polonized works, like Voltaire's early on.
Meaning he adapted them, make them resonate more for Poles.
Exactly, infused them with Polish themes. And throughout his life, he did paraphrases or translations of Horace, Schiller, Byron, Goethe, Dante, literary giants.
And his version of Byron's Giaour is still the standard Polish one.
Considered so, yes, which really speaks to his skill with language, his ability to capture the essence of another work while making it his own.
So his final years, marked by tragedy, but also that same unwavering commitment.
Yes. In September 1855, his wife Selina had died. He leaves his younger children.
And travels to Constantinople during the Crimean War. Why?
His final mission, really, to try and organize Polish legions and even Jewish legions, interestingly, to fight alongside the Ottomans and their allies against Tsarist Russia.
Still trying to strike a blow for Poland's freedom.
Right up to the very end. But he died there suddenly, November 26, 1855, officially during a cholera epidemic.
But there were other theories. Poisoning. A stroke.
There were suggestions, yes. Given his political activities and enemies, it's perhaps not surprising, though cholera was certainly raging. It adds another layer of drama to his end.
And even his burial was controversial initially.
It was. Should he be buried temporarily in Constantinople? But Prince Czartoryski, the émigré leader, decided on France. So his body was embalmed and eventually buried in Montmorency near Paris in 1856.
But that wasn't the final resting place.
No. Decades later, in 1890, came that huge patriotic event. His remains were brought back and reburied in Wawel Cathedral in Krakow.
Well, that's where Polish kings are buried, right?
Yeah.
A place of huge national significance.
Exactly. It was this massive symbolic act, cementing his status as a national hero, a national prophet, bringing him home to the heart of Poland.
Which leads us perfectly into his legacy. He's revered alongside Suwałki as the greatest Polish Romantic poet.
Undeniably. But, as you said, more than a poet, a national prophet. And a huge part of that comes from his role in Polish messianism.
Right. We touched on this. Chmielewski might have founded the philosophical side, but Mickiewicz made it famous, popularized it.
He absolutely did. He connected it directly to Poland's history, its suffering, and infused it with this religious, mystical fervor.
Especially in his books of the Polish nation.
Yes. Those writings spread these revolutionary ideas Poland as the Christ of nations, the martyr whose suffering would ultimately bring freedom to others across Europe. It gave meaning and hope to generations of Poles living under occupation.
And his memory is just everywhere in Poland and beyond.
It really is quite remarkable. Monuments in Krakow, Warsaw, Poznan, but also in Ukraine, Lithuania, Belarus, France, Germany.
Streets, parks, universities, institutes named after him, even waterfalls in the Tatra Mountains.
It shows how deeply embedded he is in the cultural landscape.
And he was even on Polish coins in
What?
the 70s. His image is just everywhere.
Yeah.
It permeates Polish identity.
It truly does. His life was just this incredible fusion of art and national destiny, wasn't it?
Yeah. From those solitary childhood days, through the intellectual ferment, the exiles, the academic life, the messy personal stuff, always that commitment to a free Poland.
He really did embody the spirit of that era. And his work, his political actions, his whole prophetic vision, it still resonates. It tells us so much about that fundamental human drive for freedom, for self-determination.
And how a nation can kind of write itself into existence through culture, through shared stories, even when it doesn't physically exist on the map.
Exactly. He was that blend of classical grounding and romantic fire, the prophet and the pragmatist. A true poet of transformations.
His story really is a powerful reminder, isn't it? That even when things seem impossible, the human spirit can create something extraordinary, something that lasts.
Absolutely. This has definitely underlined just how huge his impact was. We hope it's made you curious to maybe read some of his work or learn more about that fascinating, complex time.
Maybe even track down more clues about that lost science fiction novel. Thank you for your attention. You can subscribe our podcast if you like it.
See you next time.